That was the first night I covered these. And we've been getting down around 1-2 degrees at night. A little petunia there. Not growing much, but it hasn't been damaged. This is a ranunculus, another petunia, some double flowering kale, some parsley. It's all been doing well. Just thought I'd cover them since I hadn't really gotten warm during the day and I was out here covering things anyways. Good morning. Prairie Plant Girl here. We had another cold night last night. Got down around 0. And I was covering things up. Now a lot of this stuff that I'm uncovering this morning would probably be fine in that cold weather, but when they're forecasting around 0 and it's supposed to clear overnight, you never know how cold it really might actually get. So I just covered up my ranunculus and my window box planters there on the deck, and I have a few more ranunculus behind me under a sheet here. So I'm going to be uncovering those as well. But you might have noticed I have frost cover by the deck there that was kind of down on the ground. That's covering up pots of petunias, and I have some bulbs planted in there. They'll be fine. But the petunias, you know, if it got down, you know, below 0 a few degrees, like -2 Celsius or so, they might not do so well. The window box planters, those petunias have been out a little bit longer, so they might be okay and they're full enough. I wouldn't worry about them if I lost those petunias, but I didn't want to lose all the ones in those pots. But I thought this morning might be a good time to just talk to you a little bit about frost protection and when it's safe to be getting your plants started in these cold climates like mine here. I'm in Saskatchewan, Canada. We get cold here, and our season usually starts, our frost-free season usually starts down in the southern part here where I am, around May 20th to May 24th, in that kind of week somewhere usually is when our frosts kind of stop. But so today's the 21st of May, and we have very cold frost potential weather for the next 3 nights at least. Then finally it looks like it's going to warm up. But normally I get things like my tomatoes and a lot of my warmer season crops out a little bit sooner than that frost date, because I usually use some means to get around that cold weather. But this spring just hasn't cooperated. And since a lot of you that have followed my channel for a while have seen me doing that, and now you're starting to ask questions about things like that, I thought I should address why this year wasn't a good year for starting things outside early that need a little bit more heat. So let me finish getting this blanket off behind me here, and we'll go over into the raised garden beds and we'll talk about that a little bit. Okay, I'm looking at the sun so you don't have to, so if I'm squinting, sorry about that. So why haven't I planted out my tomatoes yet? You know, you may have seen over the years me use a product called Cozy Coats or Wall of Water. It's just these kind of tubular kind of things here, and then they have little tubes actually inside of them that are closed at the bottom. You can fill them with water and then kind of close them in, and it holds heat around your plants. And you can extend and you can extend the season with those a little bit. But the thing is if I'm planting out things like tomatoes that are a warmer season crop, they need warm soil to go into. So normally you'd see me with these plastic covers. I often have hoops hoops like this here, and then I have little things on the sides of my beds that go across to the other, and I'll have them on the other side, and they can stretch across and go over my beds, and they can hold up just some poly plastic, like 6 mil poly is what I usually have, and that traps the heat of the sun during the day and then warms up the soil, and I get the soil much warmer under that plastic than it is, say, in just an uncovered bed. So I usually use the plastic to get things warmed up in the spring, get the soil warmed up. And then once that dark soil is warmed up, it starts to hold the heat. And as long as you keep getting the sunny days to replenish that heat in the soil, then it'll stay nice and warm. The trouble this year is we're not getting the sunny days. So it looks beautiful and sunny right now. But it hasn't been staying that way. We've been getting a lot of rain. We even had some sleet. We've had a little bit of snow in May. Nothing that's stuck around. But it hasn't been enough to warm the soil up consistently over the day. We've had a lot of cloud cover. And even when it is sunny, like right now, it looks sunny, it looks beautiful, it looks warm out. It is 2 degrees out right now. So that isn't really, even with the sun shining on the plastic, isn't doing much to warm the soil up. So I had my soil warmed up. I was quite happy with it about a month ago. I took the plastic off thinking it wasn't needed anymore. I was thinking I was going to set my cozy coats up. We were starting to get those typical prairie spring days where it was getting quite warm during the day, you know, like 15 Celsius or so, and then dropping back cold at night. But that 15 Celsius during the day is going to heat things up enough that I could hold that heat overnight in the cozy coats and keep the soil warm enough. But then our weather changed again. It's just been a really crazy spring, and this isn't a oh woe is me video. It's just explaining why I'm not planting those warmer season crops out early like I normally do. So yeah, I just haven't been able to get the soil to stay warm consistently. With it being overcast and cold during the day, it just hasn't been enough to warm that soil up enough that it's safe to be putting those plants into that soil. They'll just completely shock going into soil that's like 10 degrees or less Celsius. It's not a good situation. I don't want to put my plants in that because it's just setting them back, and then I'm no further ahead than just keeping them in the house. So right now my plant room is just packed with plants that would like to be outside, but they can't be. And that's just the reality of gardening in the prairies. So I'm just waiting. Now it does look like towards the end of this coming week, we will be getting into those proper 20-degree days, so that even if it dips down at night, we should be able to retain enough heat to start getting things planted out. I still will probably wait till at least a week, 5 days of those nice warm days, and looking into the long-range forecast to see if I'm going to be able to put things out like my tomatoes. I will hold off on my peppers and my eggplant just a little bit longer, but hopefully it'll be warm enough. I'll start planting. Like I said, I've already started putting out a few petunias and things in pots. They're a little bit more cold hardy. Marigolds, I find to, at least the ones that I've been saving seeds off of for years, they're cold hardy enough that with protection at night over the freezes, they're okay. And of course I have my cauliflower and my broccoli and all those cold loving plants out already, and they've been out through all of this, and I haven't been putting sheets or blankets over any of that. My lettuce, my spinach, you know, those things are all very cold hardy and fine to be out. I've planted in my root crops, like my potatoes I've started to plant, my parsnips, my carrots. You know, those things are fine to be putting those seeds, or in the case of potatoes, the seed potatoes down in the ground, and they'll be fine through this little bit of colder spring that we're having. And once things warm up, they'll really get going for me. But things that are a little bit more cold sensitive, you want to have warm soil to put them in, and you want to be able to keep them protected from frost and really cold overnight. So like I said, this is a great product if you have warm soil to put your plants in, but if you don't, I wouldn't use it. And I wouldn't try and push your plants out early if you can't get your soil warmed up, and that's why I'm waiting. I probably still will put these around my my tomatoes for the first week or so, just because I think it helps. I won't, because it hasn't even been getting warm during the day, I haven't been able to properly harden my plants off. They haven't been able to be outside even. I mean, if it's only getting to 12 degrees during the day, that's not enough for tomato. So I'll probably still put these out, warm them up one day, you know, or use warm water to fill them, get my tomatoes out, and I'll be able to put my tomatoes out with less hardening off. I'll probably just bring them out for a few days and then pop them in these cozy coats so that they're exposed to less wind. The harsh rays of the sun are buffered a little bit by this this contraption here, and the cool nights are buffered a bit too. So it'll help transition them a little bit. But I won't be able to use them to extend my season this year at all. So yeah, even with this up, I've had it up now again for about a week, and I've been checking the temperatures, and the soil's not warming up. Just not sunny enough during the day, not warm enough during the day. So that's fine. That's, you know, that's prairie gardening, and lots of people don't put their plants out early. So, but I just want to explain, because I know some of you, I think, are kind of wondering from what I'm seeing in the comments why I'm not doing this yet, and whether you can be getting things out early. So kind of a rambly video, but hopefully it explains, you know, like things like plastic, they don't hold heat at night. Frost blankets will help. They'll help hold the heat, trap the heat down a little bit, but plastic, the heat does dissipate out of them over the nighttime, and quite quickly. So unless you have a good warm base to start with, this isn't doing anything but trapping the heat during the day, because it kind of magnifies the rays and heats things up. You know, like if you're sitting in a car, it heats up when the sun shines in. But as soon as the sun goes away, it cools down again. And it's the same thing with plastic, only even faster, because a car does have the metal panels and the glass is more insulating than this thin plastic. But the same kind of idea, or maybe like a tent if you camp, kind of that idea. A good example would be my shed. I'll show you. My shed is like a double-walled plastic, no insulation in it, but I have some of my more tender, but still somewhat cold-tolerant flowers and things out in there. And actually, I wound up putting a plant light, a grow light in there, just to try and give them a little bit of supplemental light, because there's not enough light, not enough windows in the shed for them. But I thought it was just a temporary thing for a couple of days. I threw them in there one day, thought the cold tolerant flowers would be able to come out of the cold frame and stay out. And then I'd put those slightly cold tolerant, but not so much, plants into the cold frame. But it's just been too cold even for that. So I've had the less cold tolerant plants in the shed there, where they can have a little bit more protection, because the cold frame is just a thin plastic, so it loses its heat at night. I do use frost blanket in there, and it's a little more effective now than it was in, say, March, because the ground isn't completely frozen anymore, but it's still not enough for some of those more sensitive plants. The very, very the plants that really aren't heat tolerant at all, like the warm weather plants that I have, like my dahlias, my begonias, I don't know, I've got a bunch of plants in the house still, like of course my peppers and my tomatoes, my eggplants, those are all still in the house. Those can't handle being out here at all. But I do have a few things, like my cannas are out in my shed. There's my cleome. I wasn't sure if it would like being out here in this cold. Jade Princess millet. This is my gomphrena, some alyssum, and some cannas. So None of these are super happy in their conditions here, and on days when it's warm enough, I open the shed up or even take them right outside if it's above like 10 degrees, 7 degrees even out. But they do have a small grow light in here that's giving them a little bit of supplemental light. So, but yeah, this shed being double walled just keeps things just a little bit warmer than my cold frame even. The advantage of the cold frame is it's letting more light in on the cool days. So I don't need to use supplemental lighting in there. I have a little thermometer here, and I don't know if you can read it, but it's about 40 degrees in here. And that's in Fahrenheit, because this thermometer's Fahrenheit. I think that's around 5 or 6 Celsius. I'll convert it on the screen for you. My cold frame, when I was in the house, was also showing that it was about 4 degrees in here, but the sun's shining on this. It's not actually shining on my shed yet. So the sun is what's warming this up right now. Whereas it got down to 2 degrees in here. And I don't know, I don't have a thermometer that holds overnight lows. I need to buy myself one. But I don't have one for the shed. But I suspect, being that the sun's not shining on it yet, that 40 degrees Fahrenheit is where it got to overnight. And it hasn't started to warm up yet during the day, I'm pretty sure. So it's pretty crowded in here. A lot of these plants were outside until a couple of days ago, and then we dropped really, really cold again at nights and during the days. So I couldn't even have some of these really more what I consider cold tolerant plants even sitting outside. They could come out during the day. Probably it's going to be, I think, 12 today, but then tomorrow it's only supposed to be 8. So it's just not worth hauling them in and out when they're going to get the light in here. It's not an ideal setup right now, but they'll be okay for a couple of days. And like I said, the long range is looking much better. So, but yeah, that's, you know, when you're talking about extending the season and getting a jump start, it doesn't always work. And that's just how it is. So these plants will sit longer. Just to give you an idea of the plants that are a little bit more cold tolerant, I guess, in my opinion, anything that's perennial or even hardy, you know, like even a few degrees warmer or a few growing zones warmer than yours. Like I have some chrysanthemums in here that technically might not be hardy in my growing zone, but they're fine to be out in this cold, you know, to be out in colder weather. They're going to take a little bit more frost than, say, something that's only hardy in like growing zone like 7. I'm growing zone 3 here, so it just kind of gives you an idea of what kind of like cold temperatures they can take. But again, remember, young plants are not as hardy as mature plants. So yeah, I have some chrysanthemum in here. Of course, I have a few more like brassicas, like cauliflower, cabbage, all those could be sitting outside. They'd be fine, but they're in trays mixed with other things. I have some yarrow, dianthus. Now that tray could probably go out. It has some bunny tails grass sitting in it. I'm not sure how the bunny tails grass would do, so I just threw the whole thing in here. Salpiglosis is generally pretty cold tolerant and can handle a little bit of frost, but again, as young plants, they're a little more susceptible to that, so I threw them in here. Marigolds, same thing. I have Love in a Mist. I'm not really sure. I've read that it's pretty cold tolerant, but I wasn't positive, so I left some of that in here. Candy tuft. I have some, I think this is celery still. Yeah, a little bit of celery left I need to deal with. The rest is planted out. Celery's pretty tough, so the rest is planted out in the garden. But you know, this is just sitting here in this little tray, roots hanging out. It's going to be more susceptible to the cold than something that's planted down in the ground with that little bit more insulation around the roots. I have some, I just lost the real name for it. Million bells anyways, super bells. It's some plants I grew off of saved seed from last year. It's just hooking on here, but that's what this is here. I don't have the tag for it, so. Oh, calibrachoa. Yeah, calibrachoa. So some calibrachoa here. I think this is actually one little bacopa. I think I somehow got bacopa seed in with the calibrachoa when I was saving seed. Like I said, my petunias are out here. What else do I have out here? Asters, foxglove, my amobium is out here. My Obretia, it's not super happy. I'm not sure I'd recommend that. My bee's friend, snapdragons. So yeah, there's a lot of plants that are, you know, fairly cold hardy, but I just feel like when they're young seedlings, I don't want to push them too far out. Some of these plants, some of them would be fine, but like I said, they're in mixed trays and I just haven't got it all sorted out. But yeah, I'm just playing on the safe side. The weather's been so unpredictable this year. I'd just rather play on the safe side than lose all these plants I've been growing all winter. Or I've been growing, you know, since March, so. So to recap, because I think this is rambling, maybe it didn't make sense. The reason I'm not starting things early is because the soil isn't warm and I can't get it warm with the weather we're having, even with plastic protections and things. Plastic doesn't hold heat at night, not thin plastic like this. So you need something that's a little bit heavier. Glass will hold heat in better if you have a glass cold frame or glass panels that you can put over like bricks or something. Double-walled plastic like my shed works works better to hold heat in, and frost blankets will help to hold heat in better. As far as just frost protection that you're putting on at night, you saw I was just using sheets, and then I take that off during the day on my more cold tolerant plants, and then they can still get the sunshine during the day. I couldn't leave those things on during the day because they need the sunshine and the sun's not getting through them. The same with, I had some black plastic pots and I had bricks on them. That was just because I was kind of out of things to put on those last couple of ranunculus, and really the ranunculus should have been fine anyways, but it would have kind of heated up a little bit in the last rays of light there yesterday and hopefully slowed down the heat moving out of them. But not the best protection, I wouldn't recommend it. But yeah, so just, you know, keep in mind that plastic, thin plastic, isn't going to protect anything from any major cold, and it could fry things during the day if you don't open it up. But hopefully this made sense. Hopefully this wasn't too rambly of a video, but I just wanted to address some of those things. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.